We will be recording this public meeting tonight, so appreciate folks for understanding. First of all, I'd like to introduce the interpretation services of this public meeting so that folks who need them can access them. To pin the interpreter's video, click the ellipses in the top right corner of the interpreter's video and select Pin Video. You will need to repeat this process each time we switch interpreters. We also have interpreters tonight who are translating the meeting into Spanish and Haitian Creole. If you require these services, please click the interpretation button on your screen, the globe icon, and select which language you wish to hear. Closed captions will be located also on the bottom of the screen as well. I would like to note that all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements regarding preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit at www.mbta.com/Title 6 to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. I'd like to remind folks, remind everyone of the rules for participating in this meeting, as well as remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If you prefer not to be recorded, please keep your video off and your microphone muted. We hope that to have designed an online public meeting that will be interactive and provide an opportunity for us to have a conversation together. And before we get started, I want to overview a few technical aspects of the Zoom platform. You can view closed captions by clicking the closed captions feature and selecting from the options shown. A show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen, and you'll be able to view full transcript during the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon Cranston, who will take it away from here. Sharon?
Good evening. My name is Sharon Cranston. I'm the project manager for MBTA Capital Delivery for this project. Tonight, we're going to talk about the purpose of this project and go over the initial public survey and study area. And then we're going to discuss the work that we performed, the noise recorder locations, the sound complaint input form and results, the qualitative analysis of the sound clips, the quantitative analysis, reported activity within the sound area, and our field observations. And then we'll summarize our study for everybody's reference. Adam, you got something that popped up on top. Thanks. So the purpose of this project, oh, sorry, next slide, please. The purpose of this project was to perform a study to investigate the noise complaints that were coming from the residents living in the Readville area. The study's goal was to identify the sources of reported noises from the local community. Next slide, please. The MBTA and local officials conducted a month-long public survey in September of 2022 regarding the noise complaints in the area. There were no specific geographical limitations to the study, so the 148 responses that were gathered were used to generate a map to understand the relevant study area that we needed to further investigate. As you can see on the screen is an image of the survey that we used. Next slide, please. The results of the survey were then mapped and colored according to the nature of the complaint. The conclusion of this data led to the selection of 4 site locations to deploy automated noise recording devices to the study area through the month of May 2024. 1 second. The orange dots on this map represent low-tone, low-frequency complaints. The brown dots represent low-tone frequency complaints that were train engine specific. The red show locations of high-tone frequency complaints, and yellow are a non-specified complaint. Black dots represent complaints where we didn't have enough detail to categorize. Next slide, please. So we located 4 of these automated noise recorders in the field. We put one at the MBTA Readville layover yard, one at Readville layover yard, layover yard 1, which is owned by the MBTA but used by CSX. And then we had 2 at private residences, one near Iacono Playground and one near Washington Square. I'm going to have Eric Tallheimer.
Jared, if I may just jump in, it's Rep Consalvo. I think that's a typo. The other private residence was in Fairmount Hill.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to have Eric Tallheimer, our lead acoustic engineer for WSP in the United States, discuss further the details of the data collection and investigation that WSP did on behalf of the MBTA. Eric?
Sure, thank you, Sharon. Let's go to the next slide where I'll start. I will introduce myself very briefly. My name is Eric Tallheimer. I've been doing acoustics in the form of environmental, transportation, community noise for over 35 years. As Sharon said, I am the lead acoustical engineer for WSP here in the United States. What we tried to do was to try to understand, try to identify the noises that people had been complaining about. It was unclear to us and to the complainants what the noise source might have been. So that was really the gist of what we were trying to figure out through these recordings, which I'll talk about. As Sharon said, we selected 4 locations to put out some noise monitors. These were fairly sophisticated monitors that we left out for an entire month, and they recorded what's known for you technical folks as wave audio files. You can think of them as tape recordings. We did so because we would then want to interrogate them later and try to figure out what it was people were actually hearing. So our first site was in yard 2, our second site was in yard 1, and our third and fourth sites were at private residences, again with our thanks to them for letting us set up our equipment there. Next slide. So during the month-long, let's call it noise monitoring or tape recording, we also asked people to send in complaints, observations, concerns they had through, again, a dedicated MBTA webpage. This way we could keep track of who it was, where they were, what it was folks were hearing. This became then important to us as we tried to correlate these observations against the recorded sound levels that I just described a moment ago. Next. At the end of the month, which was May of 2023, we had received at least 57 separate responses through this, I'll call it the complaint or observation website. And we were able to start to digest them and sort them into different locations, different times of day or night, and indeed, the type of noise that people tried to describe. Next. And this is where we had started then with digesting, again, the issues, the descriptions that people had let us know about during the month of May. Some people were talking about low frequency vibration sounds. Others were mid frequency. Some were high frequency. Some could clearly identify train sounds like horns or crossing bells. And so we simply tried to group them in similar characteristics. But what was more important was we then went back into our tape recorded data and zeroed in on each one of these events so that we could then listen to them ourselves. Next, please. Yeah, as I just said, we found that these sound clips, which we were able to cut into about 2 or 3 or 4 minute samples, centered around the time of the issue, we were then able to share them with at least 4 members of our team. The idea being, we wanted to get their unbiased, subjective opinion of just what it was they were hearing on these tape recordings. 2 of us, myself included, were experienced acousticians, very familiar with noises at night from having been out there too many nights. Others were lay people, just experienced with their daily lives and the types of typical noises in an urban or suburban community. And so we asked all 4 of these people to just listen to all of the tape recordings and give us their feedback. Next. We also did some quantitative analysis where we looked at each of these tape recordings and did what's known as a spectrum analysis. You see a picture of one at the bottom. What a spectrum analysis does is it figures out what frequencies or what tones are most dominant in a tape recording. You can think of it as keys on a piano, low frequency on the left, high frequency on the right. But the reason we did this was it gives us what's known as a sound signature, which we can then pretty well match up and identify with the source that is most likely producing it, depending on where these dominant frequencies occur. Next. Couple of examples here. The figure on the left shows low frequency dominant noise, which would come from typically locomotives or power plants or industrial processes, something of a very large nature. On the right, which is characteristic of other of these events that people were called us about, we see that it's mid to high frequency dominant, which could be roadway traffic, aircraft overflights, or just HVAC systems or ventilation systems that people may be hearing. Next. We also tried to correlate our findings against the schedules of known train movements in the area or operations. So we collaborated with the MBTA, with CSX for freight to try to get their schedules during the nights in question. So again, we could match up, well, was there or was there not a train moving during the time of the event? Next. Lastly, we put eyes and ears into the field at night. We had a couple of acoustical volunteers from WSP that went out during a couple of nights. And this was in July of 2023, and simply used their own ears. They simply listened. What was it that they were hearing in the vicinity? And they would then follow their ears to what the source might have been and would note it down and observe what it was. So again, it's simply a means of trying to put some real eyes and ears to identify what people might be hearing in real time. Next. In general, these field observations simply found not unusual urban noise sources. Yes, some trains moving. Yes, there were some train horns, but also fire trucks moving, buses moving, air brakes. So there, again, there was no absolutely consistent identifiable type of noise source that these people observing at night were able to see for themselves. Next. And the same can be said of our summary. When we looked again at what our subjective listening responses were to the tape recorded events, when we looked at the spectral signatures, when we tried to match up train movements with observed potential sources, we came up with essentially, this is a not unusual, I'll dare say typical urban or suburban environment close to rail corridors. And with that, I'm going to pass back to Sharon.
Thank you very much, Eric. So we're going, next slide, please. Adam is going to moderate a question and answer period. So Adam, if you'd like to explain how that works.
Thanks, Sharon. So before we get started with questions, Q&As, I'd like to turn it over to, I see Representative Consalvo has joined us. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Representative Consalvo, all the hard work that you've put on this project, and offer you the opportunity to ask any questions or offer any comments before we go ahead and turn over to general Q&A. You're still muted, Representative.
Okay, can you hear me now, Adam?
Yep.
It wouldn't let me unmute until you gave permission, so thank you for giving me permission. No, thrilled to be on the call tonight. I know this is a hugely important issue in my district. This is an issue actually that many on this call, and I'm thrilled to see there's close to 100 people on this call, have been dealing with for literally tens of years. Obviously, we all recognize that we have Southside Maintenance Facility in Readville. It's been there for many, many years. This dates back to my time as an aide to Rep. Scosher, and as I said, my time as a Boston City Councilor. It's been an ongoing issue. And many folks on this call from my district and from Milton and Dedham, who are also on the call, have raised these concerns for many years about noise around the Southside Maintenance Facility. Just want to put, Adam, if I may, a quick context on this. Let me first thank the MBTA for agreeing to the sound study. Myself and Senator Rush and Representative Driscoll and McMurtry were able to work with you to secure the $250,000 to do this sound study, because we believed very strongly that obviously where there's smoke, there's fire, and also that data is a really important point to have as we go forward to try to think about solutions to this problem. We wanted to make sure we had the data. And we wanted to make sure we had the information available to arm ourselves when we continue to work with the T to address these issues. And so it was a collaborative effort. And thank you to the T for putting the $250,000 in your budget in the capital investment plan, otherwise known as the SIP, which we worked hard to get in there. We also worked very hard to make sure there were 2 surveys sent out. And I see several questions in the chat about who got the surveys and who didn't. That's always an issue, but we sent it out to 21 community groups on our listserv. We know that the other reps and senators sent it out as well, tried to reach it as many people as possible, but thrilled to say that literally hundreds of people responded to the survey on both surveys, one that was originated by my office working with you and one that was originated by your sound consultant. So we were able to collect literally hundreds of comments from the public on that. And so thrilled that that was a piece of this sound study as well. I know that this is an ongoing issue. It's not often we come into a meeting with actually some good news, and just want to, for context, make sure folks know that recently the governor did announce that as part of an effort to electrify all of the commuter rail lines and to move more diesel engines off the line, that the Fairmount line, and Adam, you can correct me if I don't have the language correct, but I'm pretty sure it's that the Fairmount line will be the first sort of pilot and first line to go all electric by 2027, which is the hope. And certainly that's a great victory for this community and for all the lines along this. We've worked hard with Representative Holmes and Representative Brandy Fluker-Oakley on this issue. And the fact that by 2027 or thereabouts, we will have electrified service along the Fairmount line. We know that's going to take off diesel trains, and that will help us with some of this noise. But I also know that that's 3 or 4 years away, and we still have a lot of work to do. So I'm thrilled that that's happening, and I see that as a real positive towards this issue. But I am committed to working with my elected official colleagues and the neighbors to try to continue to work with the T and the governor's administration about how we continue to make the coexistence with the Southside facility and our neighbors as less burdensome as possible. I think there's other things that we can be doing. I plan on meeting with the governor very soon about the electrification, which is so exciting, but about what are other things we can be doing? What are things we can be doing now in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term to mitigate some of these noise challenges we're facing? So the sound study is a great first step. It gives us the aggregated data that we need. We appreciate the MBTA for hearing us on that. And I want to thank the T for coming out to this meeting tonight, because I'm very excited that you'll have the opportunity tonight to hear from almost 100 neighbors on this call. I know hundreds of people participated in the surveys, but now you have people on this call where you'll be able to hear from them directly about how the noise of the trains up and down the line and of Southside impact their daily lives. And look, we are thrilled that we have commuter rail in our community, one of the only neighborhoods in the city that has 4 commuter rail stations to help people travel in and out of the city and to commute around Boston. And I support commuter rail as an important piece of transportation as part of the network, and was a co-sponsor of the funding with Brandy Fluker-Oakley to move forward with the electrification, and that has my full and continued support. But I pledge to stand with my neighbors to continue to see how we can work collaboratively with the team, with the governor's administration, to see how we can address some of these short-term and medium-term noise issues. So thank you to everyone on this call. I've already spoke too much, but I wanted to put some context on that and look forward to everyone having the opportunity to have their say tonight, just to let folks know the real personal connection to the noise and the real personal connection to some of the vibrations and pulsations that they're experiencing every day. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Representative. Anyone else from an elected officials offices? Happy to recognize you now if you have any comment before we turn it over to public Q&A. I see Matthew Peterson from the city of Boston. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello, my name is Matthew Peterson. I work for the Boston Transportation Department, and I am our kind of rail program specialist. So I again would like to echo all those thanks to the MBTA for conducting this study. The city of Boston recognizes that commuter rail, as you, the representative said, is a crucial asset to our communities, especially to neighborhoods like Hyde Park and Southwest Boston that rely on commuter rail as being one of their fastest connections into the center of the city. At the same time, we recognize that there are noise impacts, and just because something may be typical for an urban neighborhood next to a railroad corridor does not mean that there's nothing we can't do to mitigate that noise. And we continue to urge the T to look to ways to mitigate that noise, and we'll work with the T collaboratively to help ensure that can happen. So thank you again for doing the study, and I would like to validate some of the folks who say that just because something may be typical around trains doesn't mean necessarily that it's good. But we also recognize that this is enabling a crucial service that many of our residents rely on, and the city is looking forward to working with the T to help move something forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So with that in mind, folks, if you'd like to share a comment or ask a question, please use the chat feature at the end of at the bottom of your screen to submit your typed question or comment. You will submit those questions to Ask a Question. We will alternate between reading questions and comments already submitted and recognizing those who want to pose a question verbally. So please be brief so that we can hear from as many folks as possible. People who wish to share a question or a comment verbally can press the raise hand function. For those who are joining on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing star and then 9, so star 9. All attendees who speak other languages, either Spanish or Haitian Creole, please raise your hand to provide your comments and questions verbally for the interpreters to hear and repeat your comments. When we recognize your name, you'll be unmuted and you may speak. After you share your comment, we will lower your hand and you will be returned to the muted state. before we open the comment and question segment to the public, just a reminder to use the raise hand feature so that we can keep things in order. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl, where I'm going to ask you to unmute Cheryl, and you can go ahead and ask a question.
Yes. Mhm.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is actually Beth Flightman, and we are from 75 Crown Street in Milton. Just want to let you know that this noise has started in January of 2020. We live at the top of the hill, and the reverberating starts anywhere from 8 p.m. and can go all the way through to 6 a.m. the next morning. Typically, it will be 1:30 a.m. through 6 a.m. the next morning. And where we live at the top of the hill and we're several miles away from the yard, we want to know what can be done to mitigate this noise. There has to be something to be done for our area because again, we've never had this noise. I've lived here for over 30 years and it just started in January of 2020. And notice enough that when Mayor Menino was alive, we never had this noise. Unfortunately, after he passed, he stuck up for the neighborhood, for his area in Readville. He did a wonderful job. What we know, it's very interesting that several years after his passing, that this has started, and we want to know what is going to be done to mitigate this noise. It wakes you up from, a sound sleep. Literally, the only way to sleep is with earplugs. And during the warmer months, before you turn the air conditioning on, if you have the windows open, it's like torture.
Thank you for your comment. I hear and understand your frustration. Eric, I think that the description you gave me previously about why the sound is echoing off the hills would be very helpful.
Sure. Hello, and thanks for the comment. And it's funny you brought up the Readville effort that we had done several years ago. Those are my noise barriers. If you go out and look at them.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. The noise will travel in air for the most part until it hits something. So people that are uphill from a noise source, there's really nothing in the way. There's nothing that's going to stop that noise other than distance and a little bit of air absorption, which we won't get into. But that's essentially it. If it is a matter of geometry, if you are uphill of a noise source, you're going to not only see it, but you'll be able to hear it more clearly. It does not necessarily mean that the noise levels rise to a level that becomes a regulatory problem, but every site would need to be studied individually. I hope that helped.
Thank you. With all due respect, it did not, because literally, again, living at the top of the hill, we are well aware that there are no noise buffers and the reverberation will bounce. And because there's nothing to stop it, that's what happens. You could literally walk out my front door and just continue walking straight across if you could, and it would take you directly to the Fairmount area. But once again, my question specifically is, what will be done to mitigate the noise?
So right now, we don't have any active construction projects or funding for any. But as we have projects that go forward, all of this information will be included in our design scope, so that we can do our best to incorporate some mitigation, but we can't, since the projects aren't funded, I can't make a promise right now. I can't say we're going to go out and build something because we don't have an active project.
Sharon, why was it that when Mayor Menino was there, it was all right to keep it quiet, but now that he's gone, none of the other neighbors or abutting communities matter?
I'll take that one. We can't speak to the city or what was done previously. We have monitored and seen what true train movements have existed in the past, but there's nothing to suggest that there was any changes since 2020. And so just with the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pam. Pam, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Pam Westcott, and here with Kathleen Karsbecken. We've lived at 46 Highland Street in Hyde Park for 21 years. And we were one of the recording sites. And we've been hearing a heavy rhythmic pounding through the night. We've been recording it, and in the last, the first 3 months of 2024, we recorded from midnight to 6:30 a.m. on 38 nights that kept us from sleeping. And we are in favor of electrifying the line, but we know that will take 3 years. We've understood that there's a possibility that the engines could be moved to Wydet Circle. And we're wondering, is that being explored as a possible solution, a temporary solution? And sometimes we don't hear the idling and pounding at all. And we're wondering, why is there that difference? Why does it on some nights not happen at all? And on other nights, it's from midnight to 6:30 a.m.
Well, before I turn it over to the team, I will say thank you very much, Pam. I didn't want to out you, but thank you so much for your helpfulness, one, to your neighbors, and to the MBTA for hosting one of those sound recorders. You're incredibly easy to work with. Eric, I think, spoke very highly of you and your willingness to be helpful. So thank you very much for that. As for Wydet Circle, we don't have any of the PMs on, but that also requires construction design and has to go through the entire environmental process there. So there's nothing imminent in terms of Wydet Circle and doing any layover facility there anytime soon. But I will say that it doesn't alleviate the need for us to also still have work at Readville, where we have had a maintenance facility. Having a layover facility versus a maintenance facility, they're two different things, but that is a very important question. It does alleviate some of the need and helps further it down the line, but not necessarily. That's more for midday than necessarily for overnight, but it is something that we can happily explore as we talk to our operations team in the future. But it is something, again, similarly, it's not been designed, nor has it been fully scoped out, and it still is a few years away.
Pam, for your questions about the operations of the trains and why the sound is different, unfortunately, I would need someone from railroad operations to help answer that question. We have written down your comment, and we'll follow up with you. If you have more details that you want to share with us, please feel free. There was a project email that was posted, and we will post it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And really quickly, one of the chats that we received, or one of the questions we received in the chat was did the volunteers visit people's homes? And I think that kind of answers that question. We work closely with members of the community, and a couple of folks even volunteered to let us into their homes and quite literally set up a device in their backyards in 2 cases where they let us record some of these sound occurrences that took place. So again, to the 2 folks that let us do that, thank you again. We couldn't have done this without you, especially the folks on Fairmont Hill. So thank you again for that. Next, I will unmute Suzanne Scanlon.
Hi there, Suzanne Scanlon. I'm a Dedham resident on Crane Street. And first of all, I'm rather disappointed that I don't see any of the Dedham Board of Selectmen or any Dedham representatives here. I've had multiple communications since 2020 as well. I have to agree with the Hyde Park residents. This is since 2020. I've lived here for 25 years, and 2020 started everything. And I am frustrated beyond belief. When I didn't know anything about the survey, I would have happily had you come in to my home and set up a recording, because I go every night at 11:20 and then 12:20 a.m. a train pulls up to the back of my house and sits there for 10 minutes and then goes back to Readville. It's not even going anywhere. It's just going out there, coming to my house, and then sitting there for 20 minutes. So I can't open my windows. I can't sleep. And I have no idea that this survey is going on. So, and I have been communicating with state reps and in the town of Dedham about this since 2020. So I'm really frustrated right now that there was all this activity going on and I didn't know about it. And it is loud. I sit here at work even during the day, and I'm on Zoom meetings, and I have to actually get off Zoom meetings sometimes because the trains, for some reason, there's a track switching thing that was supposed to be fixed a few years ago that's still not fixed. And so they put the trains park in the back of my house. And again, this is only since 2020, and it is very frustrating. And then they'll wait for another train to come by, and the train will come by and they blow the whistles. It's so embarrassing. It's, I'm really frustrated. So I just needed to say out loud with everybody on here, it's really frustrating here in Dedham. I can understand. I also feel the vibration from, that they're talking about. It's a low one, and I've always felt that. But, what I'm experiencing is something totally different. So, but I don't think that I'm very different than a lot of people here in Dedham. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Ryan.
Hi there. Thank you for the reps for sharing your time and the results of this study with us. I'm a resident of Hyde Park. Also, I've been experiencing low frequency sounds at night. And it's really, this is a well-known phenomenon with diesel engines. You can read about it. Canadian Railways done studies into it. The Chicago train system's done studies into it. So it's really no surprise. This is not a new phenomenon, some mysterious phenomenon. It's very well known and documented. As for the study, based on the map that you guys showed us, it doesn't look like any sound devices were placed in the Hyde Park area where preponderance of the observations, if not most of the complaints came from. So I don't know why that was the case. And in addition to that, as for the study, it's also pretty well known that very low frequency sound waves such as this that emanate from a diesel engine are almost impossible for the human ear to pinpoint and figure out where they come from, because they're able to bend around objects, diffract, bounce off of objects. So to rely on humans to go out at night and try and figure out where they're coming from with their own ears, it's just misleading at best. And just, it's going to lead you down the wrong road into incorrect conclusions. That's scientifically, objectively the case. So I don't know why that was even brought into a $250,000 study. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's just poor form. And it's also known that there's a lot of idling reduction technologies out there for trains, just like these diesel ones, that have been put into place starting 20 years ago. Chicago did the same thing. They have electronic warmers, essentially, that will warm the diesel engines at night, allowing them to cut their idling by at least 80%. And I don't see any reference to those kinds of technologies or those kinds of things. So I don't know why that was the case. There's not a lot of good takeaways, and I think the study, at best, is just very flawed. So yeah, not too. I don't agree with the results, and it doesn't seem very promising at this stage.
Thanks, Ryan. I will turn it over to Eric to see if you have any parts of that you'd want to address in regards to the study. Eric?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Ryan. Good comments. Yeah, I know of the folks in Canada. They do good work. I've worked with them. And for them. The low frequency issue is the issue. And you're right, low frequency is very hard to pinpoint in that it's what's known as omnidirectional. Low frequency means very long wavelength of sound. Long wavelengths means you can think of it literally as an ocean wave, a tidal wave. It breaks over barriers. It just doesn't even see them, goes right around and above them. What I will say about our field of, two things. One, our tape recordings did capture low frequency. Our condenser microphones went down to at least 10 hertz. Certainly that would capture the low frequency sound. So we were able to see it, again, in an uncompressed wave file version, so that we could essentially hear what people were hearing. Meaning we also had good audio production cards and proper speaker systems produce low frequency. Second of all, outdoors, one can geospatially identify where low frequency is coming. Not as easy as high frequency, and all of that has to do with quite literally the distance between our ears and our head. That's how we figure out direction of noise with our two ears, the slight difference between the ears that you're hearing. But outdoors, you can.
Thanks, Eric. And really quickly, can you just help remind us the 4 locations? I think there was some confusion there on where they were. I believe all 4 were located in and around the Readville area. All 4 were in Hyde Park itself.
Well, what I can say is, if you go back to, if we can put back up the slide, the 4 locations we chose were centered on where we had gotten the initial complaints. Some 150 or so initial complaints, so that we could figure out where would be the best spot to put these 4 monitors. Would we have liked to have put out a dozen monitors? Sure, but there was an equipment limitation here.
Thanks, Eric. Next up, I have Joseph. Joseph, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
How's that? Does that work?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Joe Sloan. I live on Concord Avenue in Milton. Concord Avenue is, if you're unfamiliar, is one of a number of small streets that abut the Truman Parkway, or Brush Hill Road, as some people know it. So kind of if you were heading toward Mattapan Square, if you will. I don't live at the top of a hill. But I, like many other people here and who aren't here, have experienced this pulsating, vibrating for the past few years. A couple of points. I think that I think it's a bit of a disservice that again, the citing of these recording devices, as was just stated, was related to where the complaints came from. I'm a town meeting member in Milton, and I feel like I've missed something. I don't believe that I received any communication of any sort from the town of Milton that encouraged me to participate in this process, or encourage other people that I know in Milton with this problem to participate in the process. And so when I see where those recorders were cited, I was initially really disappointed, because I didn't see any cited in any part of Milton at all. And I've seen people who've raised concerns from other towns as well beyond this. I am not an acoustician, but I work in a field that deals with acoustics every day. And it was stated earlier about the way low frequency sound travels a greater distance than high frequency sounds. It's also important to know that low frequency sounds change over distance and they evolve, as does the vibration associated with low frequency sounds. So I submit that what some of us at a greater distance from where this sample area was are experiencing things in possibly a very different way than the data that was collected. I know that the people who are located closer to the site are experiencing it in a way that's much greater than some of us are further away. But we are experiencing vibrating windows. As people said, the loss of sleep. People are suffering physical concerns with this. I submit that I'm disappointed to hear the time and the financial investment that's been put in to this, and that the scope, the geographic scope, was so limited. There have been voices from many other areas beyond this sampling vicinity for years, and it's really, I'm saddened to hear that the sampling area was so small, and I feel like it's been a disservice to those of us who live at a greater distance who are experiencing this in a very different way. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Eric, is there any part of that you'd like to speak to?
Sure, just briefly, and yes, good points. Not unusual in the sense of what we hear from people. The study area actually was 15 square miles of where we had received these initial complaints. Could it have been expanded more? Of course. But we felt, again, just due diligence, that there had been a fine identification of the main area of concern. With regard to your comment about low frequency changing effects with distance, you are right with any sound that the amplitude, the loudness, will change with distance. However, frequency does not. Frequency is maintained, at least in air. Of course, it's very different underwater, where you've got different densities, et cetera, and salinity and whatnot. But in air, no, frequency is conserved. So that's why we were able to try to do those spectrum analysis signatures, try to help us.
Thank you, Eric. Before I turn it over to Eve, just a couple questions in the chat. Where can I access the data collected as part of this study so that I can evaluate it? Where can I access the comparative data from other studies that were used to conclude that this is normal? And where can I access further details about the study's methodology? So I think 1 and 3 we can address by saying we will be able to post the results of the study onto the project page, and you can find that. Sharon, do you mind just sharing what the project page is?
Absolutely. The project page is www.mbta.com /projects/ I believe Southside Maintenance. I'm just trying to pull it up. Get it? There we go. Southside Maintenance and Layover Facility with dashes in between. I'm going to put it in the comment section for everybody. Nope.
So next up, I will ask to unmute Eve.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for putting this study together, and thank you especially to Rob Consalvo for voicing a lot of the concerns that I have shared personally with him and for the community. So basically 2 main points that I want to say. The first is, again, just sort of a testimonial. So I have lived in Hyde Park relatively short amount of time compared to others here. I've only been here since 2022. In that amount of time, I have been shocked at how this sound has impacted my sleep. So before this, I lived all over other places in the city, right next to many T-lines in South Boston, in Allston and Brighton. Never have I felt this kind of impact on my sleep, and as a result, my general health from that lack of sleep. When the noise, excuse me, is bad, it is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. You feel this vibration deep in your chest, in your heart. You wonder if something tremendously wrong is happening. But instead, it's coming from outside, from just the ambient idling trains. And it feels like it's a public health disaster that this is happening to the residents here. And my heart goes out to everyone here who is affected by this. So that's the first thing that I just wanted to share. In terms of the impact of this, it cannot be overstated. This is genuinely a public health hazard. The second thing is to some of the points Ryan was saying specifically. I think what we care about here is solutions. Everyone here is aware the trains are the source. The question of the study was, where are things most impacted? Well, it's wherever people are feeling it, they're impacted. That's known. The question is, are there variations? Sure. But ultimately, the impact is real. We didn't need the data to say that the impact is real because the people know this already. The only purpose the data could have is specifically with the FFT frequency analysis you did, what particular frequencies are there, and then are there mitigations that could be done? So if it wasn't idling trains, if it magically was something else, perhaps there were other mitigations. But we've confirmed, and your own data showed, idling trains. It's idling trains. We know this now. That's the impact. So the solution space isn't we need construction for building new things. That's not going to mitigate those idling trains physically, as we've been talking about, with low frequencies that can permeate more broadly. So what we need is operational changes. And that's the question that Ryan was getting at very precisely, which is, what are the operational changes that we could do, that MBTA can commit to mitigate this public health hazard? Is this a question of changing the schedule for working on those trains, where then if that idling, the hunting idle that has to happen when they start up, if that doesn't have to happen at 2 a.m. in the morning, if that can happen during other hours, if that can be moved to other locations, if there are heaters that can be done, what are the specific measurable things that can make this better? That's what matters. And I don't understand, and I didn't see anything in there. What I saw was sort of a hand-wavy, typical urban noise. I would encourage anyone who would say that to live here and spend the time overnight and see how that sounds, if that's really the conclusion. But anyhow, that's specifically my question. What operational things are being considered and being done before we get to 3 years out, which we know could be longer, of electrification? Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, and I'm happy to take that to my operations team. I think aside from electrifying the line and making that happen sooner, there have been no changes to any operations in the last 5 years, as far as we're aware. And you know, I know it's unfortunate in terms of hearing that, but it is true. We have not changed anything along the lines in and around Readville Yard in the last 5 years, but we do intend on making the Fairmount line the very first one to receive BEMUs, which is battery electric cars, for folks who are not aware. We've made that publicly clear, and we've committed to that, and made we said that in the news, and we've already begun the procurement process for making BEMUs first on the Fairmount line. Next I have John. John, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I'm on Canton Avenue in Milton, And I'd just like to point out a couple of things. There are 100 people on this call, and they're all looking for some mitigation. And the MBTA has offered zero. It's very sad. We all know what the issue is. It is idling trains, and they idle all the time, but the issue is that they can hear them at night because it's silent outside. So people talk about 12:45 till 6 a.m. before the traffic starts in the morning. So the sounds are always there. So what is the MBTA going to do on an operational basis to help us? We are not looking for a $100 million electrification project. We are looking for very simple things like if you drive a car today and you stop at a stoplight, what does the car do? It shuts off. It's very simple. And then when you put the gas on, it turns back on. It saves energy, it saves resources. I believe that everybody on this call will ask the MBTA to help us mitigate the noise by turning off some of the trains. And what we can do is we can have an operational meeting. We have to have the MBTA back. I would ask the elected officials on this call to mandate 30 days. And we have the operational folks back on this call to talk about what items they can do in the short term that do not cost anything. And that's what these folks are looking for. We're not looking for roadblocks. We're not looking for walls. We're looking for immediate things that can be done to mitigate it. And I would argue the easiest thing is to shut them off.
John, thank you. And I appreciate that. This is not the first time that we're having this conversation. We've had our operations team come to the community in the past. We've had several meetings and several calls with our operations team. There are things that we need to do to protect the equipment. We especially need to keep the equipment running and in order to prevent any damage to some of the locomotives overnight in particular, especially during colder months. And so there's some limitations. It's not as simple as turning the engines off. So I appreciate you on that front. And I will continue to have the conversation with our operations team and circle back, especially with elected officials who are not letting me off the hook. I will say, Representative Consalvo in particular does not let me off easy in terms of this. So I'll turn it over to Rep. Consalvo right now, and he can speak to some of the conversations that we've been having. Let me just unmute Representative Consalvo.
Thanks, Adam. And I didn't want to be the politician that gets back on because I think this is so important for the public to be able to tell their stories tonight. And to John and to Ryan, I'm taking notes here, and to Joe Sloan, this is exactly what this meeting is for. Part of the process that we've raised to this level with the MBTA, with the sound study, is to have this public meeting so that everyone who's on this call, and it sounds like, I think Joe was complaining about the notification and why Dedham didn't know. Sounds like there's a lot of Dedham and Milton people on this call. So I'm thrilled that they somehow got that notification. And there's many Hyde Park people on this call. What I'm trying to say is this is the exact part of this process. You being able to tell the MBTA in dramatic terms tonight what you're hearing is part of that study. Yes, our office sent out a survey to 21 community groups and to thousands of people that are on my email list. Yes, the T then responded with its own survey that we then sent out. Yes, we held the T's feet to the fire to hold this community meeting tonight to not only relay the results of the study, but to more importantly, give all of the hundreds of people on this call the opportunity to make sure their voices are heard. This is part of that comment period. This is part of this study. This is part of this process. It's not that it ends tonight because the T released their findings. Your voices tonight are going to drive what the next steps are for the elected officials and what the solutions are. You ask if there's a solution on this call. Yeah, there has been. And I'm proud to say that for 25 years, the councilors before me, the state reps before me, the selectmen before you, the mayor before the current mayor, and this current mayor, quite frankly, and Mayor Marty Walsh, have all been complaining about this issue and have been advocating to the MBTA about this issue on the Fairmount line. Rep. Fluker Oakley, Rep. Russell Holmes, Rep. McMurtry, Rep. Bill Driscoll are the reason that, and hundreds of people on this call, I could name people on this call, but I don't want to get into naming names and missing people, are the reason why one solution has been offered. And that's to, thank God, electrify the Fairmount line. To get the Fairmount line to be the first in the system to be electrified. This line runs through 100% BIPOC communities in the city of Boston. This is an environmental issue. This is an equity issue. And by the way, it's going to take hundreds of diesel trains off the line every year, running back and forth. So there has been a solution proposed, and I give the governor a lot of credit for proposing this. And she could have picked any other line in the system, and she picked the Fairmount line. And that's because of all of you on this call, the elected officials who came before me, the people who've been fighting for literally 30 years when I was Rep. Scotia's aide about electrifying this line and getting the diesel trains off this line. Now, that being said, that's 3 years out, and no offense, Adam, to the MBTA, but that really could mean 5 years out. So these comments will allow us and this data to hold the MBTA's feet to the fire about what are the next steps moving forward. We know the long-term solution is to electrify the line, and we're grateful that's coming. We know Whitehead Circle, and I want to thank Pam Westcott for them allowing not only the sound barrier. That's the Washington Square, by the way. That was a typo. The Washington Square sound barrier, and I want folks to know noise monitor was the Washington Square one, and we thank Pam for allowing it to be there. That, by the way, so Ryan knows, is in Hyde Park. So that's Hyde Park, and so there was a sound monitor in Hyde Park, and we thank Pam for that. But this is going to inform how we go forward. So what are our short-term solutions? Could they be sound barriers? Could they be, there's going to be multiple. I remember when I worked for Rep. Scotia, we had proposed, and they actually installed plugins that allowed the trains to not idle, but plugged in so they could be heated. Now that technology, I think, I saw it in the chat, has probably grown 10,000-fold since the 90s when I was Rep. Scotia's aide. I don't have the answer of what is going to come next, other than we know one solution has been proposed, which is the electrification of the line, which is phenomenal. But I can assure you this, the point of tonight, and I've already talked too long, sorry, but I'm passionate about this issue, is making sure your voices are heard, whether you're in Milton, whether you're in Dedham, whether you're in Readville, whether you're in Hyde Park, whether you're in Rosendale, on this call. They're going to take this back. And now it's up to us to take your voice, the data, the electrification, and other proposals and find out how we mitigate both short-term and midterm. And I'm sorry that I took so long to say that, but it's very important to understand we haven't sort of just been sitting on our laurels on this. And the announcement of the electrification of the line is a huge announcement solution to help us solve this problem. Not the only solution, but this is why we're here tonight as part of the process, as part of a really thoughtful, I believe, public process to make sure everyone's voice is heard, to be able to get those opinions across. So I've talked too long. Sorry, go right ahead.
Thank you, Representative. And if I could charge you for every phone call that you've made to me on this issue, I'd retire at 26. So thank you, Representative, for your advocacy on this. I'll turn over to Ian. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Ian Williamson. I've been in the area for quite a while. I'm right on the Mattapan line, closer to Mattapan. I do live in Hyde Park as well, and I understand everyone's frustration. You said there's been no changes in the last 5 years. Has there been any facilities that had moved their trains, whether it's from South Station, Somerville, or from what I heard, possibly from another suburban area, where they are now servicing our train because they've had the noise complaints and they were able to drive these trains out of the area? I don't know if that's true or not. Can you verify that?
So Ian, what we do is the BET, so the Boston Engine Terminal in Somerville, is actually where we service most, if not all, of our commuter rail facility, coaches and engines and locomotives. That is our main facility. It's not our only facility. And the Southside Maintenance Facility has existed for, I believe, in the MBTA network for over 70 years. I might be wrong, but it's existed for a while. But no, there's been no shift, to or from that in the Readville yard area in the last 5 years. I will say, and maybe I misspoke Ian, that the one thing that we did change is move towards a clock face interface schedule where we have the same trains run, for example, on the Fairmont line every 45 minutes, right? You can expect a train every 45 minutes, soon to be 30 minutes. That's very exciting news. But it's the same time. So if I miss a train, I can expect one in 45 minutes. But operationally, we have not changed the way that we maintain our fleet or our locomotives.
And would you say that's been within the last 10 years? That no other facility has closed or lessened their workload?
Has closed or lessened their workload? No, as far as I'm aware, no. But I'm happy to double check with our operations team, but as far as I'm aware, no.
Because it would be ideal if to push those trains back to where they belong. Now, the first train, and I could be wrong about the timing, it starts, I'm not sure what time it starts idling, but it idles until 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, I know that train does not leave Readville at 4 o'clock in the morning. Where is it going at that time? I think the first train is a little bit, the first stop could be 6. I'm not sure of the time actually. But is that first train leaving from the Readville station with passengers?
I'd have to double check the specific schedule. So no, what we have sometimes is deadhead non-revenue trains. So for some trains that start at South Station, we'll send them from the Southside Maintenance Facility up to South Station without any passengers, where they turn around and because there's some restrictions on having passengers on deadhead trains. So there's some FRA regulation that I can't entirely speak to, but I know that we can't run every single train as a revenue train. And revenue train is a fancy way of saying passenger trains.
I'm sorry, Ryan, but back in, I forget what year it was. It could have been in the 2000s early. The same test that they spent $200,000 on was done in Somerville for the sound study. And it was deemed inconclusive for the people of Somerville. Why did you spend another $200,000 in Hyde Park? I understand, I thank for the test, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I just feel like the test was a waste of time when the situation is right in front of our faces.
Yeah, Ian, I can't speak to the Somerville study, but I know for this one, like the representative alluded to, it's important to, one, understand the problem the best we can so that moving forward, we can use it to inform our project, most importantly, the Southside Maintenance Facility. And if there are opportunities for us to mitigate it either through, either through operational changes like we have with the battery electric vehicles coming, then we can do it that way as well. So I just want to be mindful of everyone else. We have about 18 minutes left in the meeting, so I do want to make sure I can get to everyone. I have Roxanne next. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you. My name is Roxanne Musto. I'm a member of the Town of Milton Select Board, and I live in this area. So I want to thank Rep. Consalvo for setting this meeting up. And I noticed there are quite a few Milton people on, but I feel that we have to back up a little bit. I found out about this from a fellow Milton resident about the form to submit for the survey. That's a problem, first of all. Then I reached out to our town administrator who I tried to access the form. I had some difficulty. I asked him to reach out to the T to get the form and make it in a format that would be easy that we could send out to people. And I believe he may actually be on this call, and I think he could reach out and text you in the chat what happened there, but we didn't get it right away. And then by the time we pretty much got word of, we might be able to fix it a little bit, but you might have to fix it yourself, the form, the study was going to be over. For the amount of surveys that you got for a catchment area of Hyde Park, Milton, and Readville, and then you're hearing from people in Dedham and some other surrounding areas here, Mattapan and so forth, it's a pittance of amount of people to make some decisions on. What you're hearing are very consistent themes of trains that are humming all night long, which I've lived on the same street, which is Milton Street in Milton, for my entire life. I grew up here. And I can tell you, when Mayor Menino was here, as other people have said, those trains didn't hum the way they are humming now. About a week or so ago, the train whistle was going off for probably 20 minutes. My husband actually jumped outside and said, "What's going on? I've never heard that before." So there are definite complaints. When you're doing a study and you have a big catchment area, you need to make sure that you get people to respond. And you need to make sure, if you're not getting responses from certain areas, why is that? What's going on? That's part of a good study. Sound is it can be a health-related issue, right? But also idling trains. What is the health-related issue with that? That hasn't ever been touched. I can tell you that in the town of Milton, what's going on here is we have 4 EPA monitors monitoring the quality of the air. And guess what? One is over in East Milton, one is over near me, which is as west as you can be, and we have some in the middle of the town, so that we have a good idea of what is going on in the town. You have monitors that you used 4 monitors for this size catchment area. First of all, probably should have been more monitors, and then you chose to put them in areas that really don't represent the entire catchment area. So I think this study is very flawed. And to sit here and hear you all say, "Oh, we don't understand, this, it was always like this," or there's no cure here. It's just a lot of talk. And I think that's very troubling, especially for people in all of these areas that are on this call. You have 100 people on the call. That should tell you something, that this is a concern, and you're hearing very consistent themes. I can tell you, I hear the trains every night humming, every single night. And in the summer, if you dare go outside, you hear it all the time. So, I think that to call this a good study, spend that kind of money on this kind of study, I think is sort of disgraceful, really. And I think that, I would hope that the T would do something about this, get a better idea of what's really going on. And actually they know what's going on because people on this call are telling you. So I find it very disappointing, frankly. And I'm hoping that there will be some follow-up and some solutions, because I think that's what we need here. We need definitive next steps, and waiting a couple of years for a train. I mean, with all of the issues that are going on with the T, with respect here, I agree with Rep. Consalvo. This could take years. It could take several years. And in the meantime, what happens? So I would implore people to reach out to the T and, and our representatives and so forth. And I think it's very important that we find solutions here and not wait for 3 or 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. I just have a few folks' hands. I want to make sure that we can get to everyone before 7:30. Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to unmute next.
Hi, thank you. You keep talking about the urban, it's a typical noise, acceptable noise in an urban area. Would it be an acceptable noise in a suburban area? What is the difference in standards for urban area versus suburban area?
Do you mind just giving the classification there?
Yeah, hi, Suzanne. Good question. Kind of figured that would come up at some point in the evening. The way that these environmental impact analyses are done, meaning if a project wishes to add or change a facility, is all very strictly regulated. The noise limitations are established at a federal level. And there is awareness with those federal agencies of the difference between an urban background noise, suburban, and rural. And those background noise differences are taken into account when these environmental studies are done. In fact, the primary determinant in these environmental studies for noise is something called a relative change, meaning it really doesn't matter what noise level you're starting at. You just can't increase it by an unacceptable amount. Now, I'm not here to, justify or explain those federal criteria, but that was done when these lines were laid, these facilities were first built, something according to what's known as the NEPA process. So I can't really explain it any different other than to reassure you that yes, from a noise, professional noise understanding, yes, we take into account the differences in background noise, existing noise between urban, suburban, and rural. We also take into account the difference in sensitivities between residences, commercial properties, and industrial properties. And we also take into account the differences in sensitivity from daytime to nighttime.
Thanks, Eric. There are 7 hands left. I'm just going to ask folks to be expeditious in their questions, and then we'll do our best to answer the questions and address them as quickly, as efficiently as possible. I will say that, folks, this is not the end of the conversation. Before I let folks go, this is not the end of the conversation. Obviously, this is something that's been a concern for a lot of folks for multiple decades now. This is one piece of the conversation. There are hundreds of comments in the chat. All of those are public record, and we record those and we analyze them ourselves. So please know that if you've asked a question, if you've left a comment in the chat, it has not gone unnoticed. And we do save that for our own records, and we will consider that also in our qualitative analysis going forward as well. So with that, Tiffany, I'm going to ask to unmute you.
Hi, Tiffany Cook. I live off Truman, right by the Stop and Shop. So my question isn't about the idling trains. My question is more about the horns honking late at night. I've recorded this several times. There's one train driver specifically that almost every single day at 1:30 wakes me up because he does like a little jingle that he honks with the train horn. And I'm sure that anyone in the Hyde Park area recalls last week where the horn went off consecutively for 22 minutes. I recorded it with my phone. It didn't stop. It wasn't like a honk and stop and a honk. He laid on that horn for 22 minutes. So I would like to know, other than the idling, why can't you stop these drivers from honking this horn at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? There's nothing on the track that they're needing to honk this horn for 30 minutes at a time for. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that. And I think we'll have your contact information from the registration. I'll make sure to reach out to you after I investigate that in particular. I will say that I'm not throwing anyone under the bus here. We also share the yard with CSX, and freight trains can be longer than MBTA trains. So typically, there are 2 sets of trains that use it. So not only MBTA, but also CSX. So it could be a CSX train, but I'll look into that, Tiffany. I'll be in contact with you. Next up, I have a phone number ending in 1445. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, good evening, sir. Thank you. And it's Craig Martin. I'm with the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association in Readville Watch. And I agree with some of the critique from some of these callers that rather insulting that you're not acknowledging that something has changed. I've been here close to 30 years, and it's only been the last half a dozen years, so maybe not quite as often, 4 or 5 years, that I'm hearing the neighbors that are complaining. The neighbor who has going to a doctor to try and find the right pill to defeat this. She has to mitigate it on her own. I feel so bad for these stories I heard today and these other stories. I got a call from Milton a couple of years ago. I'm a survivor of a horrible disease, trying to recover, wondering with me, what the hell's going on down there? These are just horrible stories, and yet something has changed, and it's deceitful for you not to acknowledge that. I will clarify something from the caller just before me. That long honking noise at our Readville Watch meeting, a participant said that he heard that and he found out that it was a sewer cleaning. Actually, because I think everybody assumed it was the horn. So I just wanted to clarify that for her, that supposedly that it was the sewer cleaning that night that was making that loud noise, because we all heard it. But yes, the other horns that she heard are definitely happening. One quick question, and then I'll go. You keep on hearing that the Nirvanas that we're replacing the diesel Fairmount with electric. My understanding is that this South Repair Yard doesn't just repair Fairmount commuters lines. I was told that it repairs lines from everywhere. And certainly they wanted to expand this yard so they could get all of the South Coast commuter rails. So if indeed we're repairing other trains than the Fairmount train, they are not electrified, so they'll still be dieseling, while in a few years we might be electrified for Fairmount. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are other trains there, and so that's not going to cure the matter, that's for sure.
Yep.
I thank you for your time tonight.
Just in the interest of time, I'll answer that very quickly. One of the mandates that the MBTA has is to decarbonize our entire fleet. So we will be working towards decarbonizing and electrifying all of our lines. So I appreciate your question there. I'm just going to go ahead and move on to, is it Sasha?
Yes.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well.
First off, I have not slept before 3:30. I don't even bother going to try to go to sleep before 3:30 in the morning. Because it's not just sound, it's literally the vibration. I can have the windows closed, earplugs in, 2 pillows covering my ears, and the vibration just goes right through me. It actually vibrates my bed at times. It vibrates the pillows. It's amazing. And one night I was so upset, I decided to try to figure out where it was coming from. I went into the yard. I saw 8 idling trains. I was told that perhaps they were doing cleaning. I sat there for 4 hours. No maintenance crew, no cleaning crew. Nothing was happening for 4 hours during that time, just the idling trains. And that's the thing, like there's 8 of them. Do they all have to be parked in Hyde Park? Can't we share the burden of, having the maintenance done in different locations? Or if they're not being maintained, keep the trains running, ship them out to, Providence or however far they go, bring them back so that at least they're not in just our neighborhood. Like, share the burden of the cost. This is definitely affecting the quality of life for a lot of people. So anyway, and then also there was a geological study done that said that some of Hyde Park is built on bedrock and others are on kind of like boulders and rubble. And that affects the fact that one neighbor could be severely affected, like I am, and my next door neighbor isn't affected hardly at all. So that's the other thing. Where is that? And the fact that, what about weather and temperature and all the other conditions that affect the quantity and severity of the noise. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you again for hopping on. Again, all of your comments are going to be used to inform, a lot of our decisions going forward. So thank you so much for the feedback. Irene, I just want to remind folks that we have about 2 minutes left and we want to get through about 5 hands. So Irene, you're next. I'm going to ask to unmute. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to thank Rob Consalvo. He's a very good person who works very hard in our community his entire life. I really have some questions about the $200,000 that has been spent, because I don't believe that the data from this study, I'm just going to be very, very, very blunt. The data from the study doesn't really reflect all the people on this call. If you listen to them, they have the same complaints. We don't need to spend $200,000 to, yes, we have to document this, but I think that a lot of the complaints that came in already reflect what was going on in the community. What I find that is really disturbing to me is that we do a study and there is not anything proposed at the end of the study as to what actions are going to be taken, not electrifying the line. This has only been going on really badly, as people have said, since about 2020. So something changed. We need to figure out what changed. We need to understand that it's impacting the health and the quality of life of the people living in quite a large radius around the yard. The other thing is that
Irene,
there is nothing for a health study to find out what these vibrations are doing to the health in the population of the people surrounding this. So that's the what I would like to say.
Thank you, Irene. ETN. Ask to unmute.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hiram Etienne, and I've actually been, first of all, I want to thank you guys for having this meeting, but I also want to thank all of sort of the reps. This thing actually prompted me to write my first letter to the governor in a long time, right? It's to the point where you literally can't sleep between 2 a.m. in the morning and 6 a.m. in the morning. And I want to second everything that was said tonight by the folks who are saying it's definitely, I think it's a health issue. It really is a health issue. And I think this affects your quality of life. Your home is probably the thing that you're going to spend the most money on ever, right? And now, after 19 years of being in Hyde Park and living a fairly peaceful life, right? All of a sudden, I can't sleep, right? And this is, at least at one point, maybe like a month or two ago, it was like maybe 70, 80% of the week, you would not be able to sleep between 2 a.m. and 6 in the morning. And I just want to say that that is completely unacceptable. If it was a neighbor that was making this kind of noise, we would be able to report that neighbor to the police. The police would deal with it, right? This is my home. There's a certain expectation of peace when you buy property. And I want to sort of resume that peace. So whatever you can do to fix that, it doesn't necessarily have to be another study. There needs to be action after this point, just to get it fixed operationally, get whatever the issue is solved. There is a difference since 2019 or 20. There are 100 people on this call saying the exact same thing. Something has changed it back, deal with it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to, I believe Nicole is next. Okay, we'll continue on with Jim.
Hello, everybody. Jim Marr from Dedham. I'm the president of the Manor Neighborhood Association. The only reason why I found out about this meeting, because Readville and the Manor and Hyde Park, at one time, our parishes were St. Anne's. So there are a lot of family on both sides of the bridge. And we are being affected too. And I feel bad for the people in Hyde Park who were in direct line of it, but I live in the Manor section of Dedham, and midnight, sometimes as early as 11 o'clock, when all the other ambient noise in the city, in the neighborhood, goes silent, it is deafening. And I feel so bad for my Readville friends and Hyde Park friends that they're suffering through this. but we in Dedham are also feeling the impact of this. And I think our state reps, our select persons, I think the mayor needs to get involved. I know Rep. Gonzalvo has done a great job for his neighborhood, just being able to get this call. But I can tell you right now, I think you need to do it in person. I went to the Readville meeting a couple of weeks ago, and there was a number of senior citizens there that had no idea how they were going to get on this call because they don't have the internet, they don't have a laptop. And as I can see some familiar faces are all sitting together, around a computer, because they probably don't have one at home. So you need to, Readville is a older neighborhood with a lot of longtime residents who don't, have Zoom capabilities that you need to be able to address going forward.
Thank you, Jim. And it's not the end of the conversation, folks. Thank you for so many folks who made themselves available on a Monday night. Thank you so much for taking the time and being committed to your neighborhood. We appreciate the feedback. Again, the study wasn't the end of the call. It wasn't the end of the conversation. We're going to be using everything from the meeting tonight to also inform MBTA operations and inform our projects going forward. We hear you loud and clear, and we really appreciate it. But before we go, I know we named some folks, but I do want to acknowledge that we have representatives from the mayor's office on the call. We have representatives from Councilor Pepin's office on the call. Representative McMurtry's office is on the call as well. Senator Rush, I see, is on the call and joined us as well. So this isn't the end of the conversation because everyone that I just named is not letting me have it be the end of the conversation. So you have really good folks in your corner fighting for you, holding our feet to the fire, and we'll continue this conversation in the future as well. So thank you everyone for taking the time again. We appreciate you and have a good night.